Welcome to the Art of Yoga Project. I am Larissa, and thanks for joining me today for some creative expression. We are going to have a look at some of the materials in our art kits and get to explore those and talk about what it means to give yourself permission to play with your materials. So if you don't already have these, why don't you pause the video and just get in front of you to be ready to go. Your oil pastels, your watercolors, Model Magic, and your watercolor pad. In addition, you will need some water for your paints and, if possible, a pencil, optionally. Okay, so after you have those things, we're just going to take a moment to ground ourselves before we start our lesson today by taking 3 deep breaths. Just take a moment to observe how you're feeling in this moment, in your body, in your mind, in your spirit. Plant your feet on the floor and sit up straight. Relax your hands. If you want to, you can close your eyes. Just take a deep breath in. Let it all out. One more time. Fill your lungs up and let it all out. And on the last time, join me in setting an intention to give yourselves permission to create today without judgment. It is one of those things that you can benefit from a lot, all of us, from being able to just explore creative materials without having our critical voice say whether we like it or not. Just put that aside for now and allow yourself to explore. Making art takes us out of our rational thinking minds into our feeling, intuitive, creative minds. So give yourself that permission to play, and remember that the process of creating is beneficial in and of itself without having to have a product come out of it. You don't even need to keep what it is that you make. You can just use it as an exercise today. So the first thing we're going to do is get out the Model Magic. Once this bag is open, the clay will start to dry. So if you want it to air dry, leave it exposed to the air. But if you want to use it again, put it either, if you have access to a Ziploc bag, do that. If not, I noticed that the eye pillows in your art kits come in a plastic bag, and this would be great to use to store any of your extra Model Magic in. If you want to use it again another day, you can put it in this bag and just wrap it up. So as long as it's not exposed to the air, you'll be able to use it again and again. So has even a little sticky part on the lip of it. If you do want to let them dry, like I did these bowls, these nesting bowls that I'm going to demo today, then they get hard, and you can even paint on them afterward with the watercolors, which is what I was exploring. So I'm going to just talk about making pinch pots. To make a couple of them that are nesting, I'm going to start out with a couple of balls of clay that are different sizes. So maybe I'll make 3 of them this time. I'm going to get 3 balls of clay, maybe one the size of a small tangerine, another like a plum, another like a big olive. And, pinch pots are one of those things that are an ancient tradition, and people have been making pottery with their hands for as long as humans have existed. That there's something that's very relaxing about feeling this material in your hands and making things with it. And dishes were made this way for people to eat with for a long time before we had modern ways of building them. So with a ball of clay, take your thumb and push it down into the middle, and pinching between your first finger and your thumb, you're going to turn the ball of clay around and evenly pinch on each side as you go around, slowly from the bottom all the way up to the top edge. I'll hold this up a little closer so you can see. And I can feel it between my fingers if the thickness is the same of the walls of the pot. And that's what I'm going for, to have even thickness of walls. The good thing about this clay is that if you don't like the way it's going, you can just crumple it up and start again. So there's no going wrong with it. I'm going to start with the next one, do the same thing. And it can be very meditative just to hold and turn that clay. If any of you have ever seen a potter's wheel, where someone is spinning clay on a wheel and throwing it to make a pot, this was the very first way that people did that. Just by holding clay in their hands, sometimes inside a bowl, and squeezing it and turning. I learned before that when I made these, to dry them this way, the bigger they got, the more they started to sink onto the table. This one probably would be fine, but I like better how they dried when I kept them upside down like this, to kind of keep the round shape without having it slump down. You can roll the balls either between your hands or on the surface of the table. I'm going to do the third one. This will be the biggest. And if you don't want to make nesting bowls, this is just one idea of something you can do. Make whatever you'd like to. See if you can pinch a little face in it, or an object that you see, or something of your favorite animal. This clay works pretty well to grab bits and pieces and stick them on to each other. And when it dries, like I said, you can color it with pens or paint. There are lots of ways that you can finish it. Another thing that I noticed as a way to add texture in this, which I did on mine, is either with a pencil, or I noticed that the paintbrush that comes with your watercolors has a nice little circular tip on the end, and it's is one way that you can add texture into your pot. Anything else around you that has texture, whether it's the bottom of a shoe or any kind of piece of almost anything, whether it's a piece of wood or the edge of a container. This can make lines in here. Really anything you can use to make textures in your clay. So use your imagination. Even your fingertips or your fingernails can do that too. You can make, and those textures will stay when this clay dries. You'll continue to see them. I noticed that when I left this clay out for about a day, it was mostly firmed up. In the thicker areas, I could still squeeze it and move the clay a little bit. And then by the end, certainly by the second day, it had fully dried. So I'm going to put those both there. Maybe do that little third one again. When they're dry, they're almost like a hard foam. So they can definitely be used to put things in, although, not intended for eating or drinking out of. So this one I will set to dry on top of here. And now, why don't we go ahead and jump into our painting. Okay, so I'm going to put the rest of this Model Magic back in the bag so I can use it later. Wrap it up. And now let's get out some of our watercolors. So with a piece of this paper, nice watercolor paper that can hold a good amount of water and paint pigment, I've got my brush, the watercolors, the oil pastels, and just as a way to start, sometimes it's hard when you're approaching a piece of white paper. If you don't draw a lot, sometimes even when you do, some days you just look at that paper and you're not sure quite how to get started. So one thing I like to do as a warm-up is just go across your page, and this will just be the back side. We'll do our artwork on the other side. This is the back. And just take your pencil or a pastel and make a curved wavy line all the way across. Next, make a dotted line. And then try zigzags. What other kinds of lines can you think of to help just get your arm and your pencil in the flow? How about loops, like if you were writing out in cursive? I'm going to draw V's. I'm going to draw repeating pattern. So 3 circles, 3 squares, 3 circles, 3 squares. Try making up some of your own types of lines to make across the page. If you're not sure where to start, just start with straight lines and work on from there. Then try lines that are different in different areas. So maybe a slow moving line and then a quick moving line that has a lot going on. Try a fast line all the way across where you press hard. Try really lightly dragging your pencil and see what kind of mark you make. Try scribbling. Try drawing really lightly. These are all good ways just to get ourselves moving. And the exercise we're going to do today is similar to what we were just doing, but just with color and pastel. So we're going to look at how working with the oil pastels, and then afterward the watercolor, one resists the other and the watercolors go around those pastels. So pick out 3 colors that you like, what you're feeling like at the moment. If you pick one as white, which I am, you won't see it that well when you first draw on your page, but then what's fun is that it comes out when you start with the watercolor. Before actually we start drawing, I'm going to have you go ahead and take your brush and drop a few drops of water into each of the colors in your palette. That will just prime our paint so that they're ready to go when we're ready to paint. Just having them be a little bit moistened means that that color pigment will be ready for us to use it. I like these palettes because they have a few spaces over here also that you can use to mix different colors. Okay, so back to the pastels. Let's take 1 minute and choose a kind of mark to make. It could be one of the lines you did on the back. It could be a shape. And we're going to imagine slow music. If you have access to music to play, you could play a really slow song. You could picture something that moves slowly. And take your pastel, and for 1 minute, we're going to just make some slow marks that feel like what that slow music feels like to you. I'm drawing circles, and so I'm just repeating. Some are smaller, some are bigger, working slowly. But you could pick any mark and just repeat it over and over, either on part of the page or on the whole page. See if you can go even more slowly and carefully. Push down with these oil pastels hard. You'll see the oiliness of the pastel come out on the paper. They make a different kind of line if you draw slowly, lightly. Okay, let's put down that color and take your next color. And we're going to think of fast music or something that moves quickly or energetically. And use your same shape that you did the first time. But now 1 minute of making that quick. So you can be more loose with it. It doesn't have to be, hardly even think about it. I think we'll just do this one actually for 15 seconds, so we still have room on our page to paint. So quick movement, 15 seconds. Okay, wow. My green lines got a lot more loose, which I like. And just take a moment to observe, how did those two ways of working feel to you? Did you like the slow, careful? Did you like the quick movement? And now we get to see what they look like together. So I think with our last oil pastel, before we go on to the paint, make a couple of lines across your page that are one of the kinds of lines you drew on the back. So it could be, a straight or dotted line. It could be curvy. And just connect it from one side of your page to the other, however you want. And with that, we've made a lot of different kinds of abstract shapes on here. We're going to switch over to use our paint and paint right on over these marks. To start out, I'm going to pick the same 3 colors that I used in the oil pastels and try combinations of them and see what comes up. So I have yellows here and I have green. With a wet brush, I'm putting them both in a mixing tray off to the side, and I'm going to see what color comes up. So this is just exploration painting. There's no right way to do this. You can fill in some of the shapes that you see with the colors you're mixing. Paint over the lines. If I just add some more water into my brush and keep going with that light green, I get kind of a more watery, lighter color. I'm going to take some color that's straight out of the pan and try it that way. And fill in some of the shapes that I made. This ends up being kind of an abstract painting about how I'm feeling right now. The colors that express where I am at this moment, the energy that I had, that was the quiet energy, as well as the more energetic. And you're not limited to use just those several colors that you picked. If you're feeling like just using one color today or using 10, go for it. Have it be a reflection of you. I love doing these kinds of artworks that are about how I feel inside. There's no right way to do them, and there's no way that it should look. They're just an abstract expression. The brushes that we have in our palettes are on the small side. If you do have access to bigger brushes that you can use as more of a wash watercolor brush, great. Although they might not fit in these little paint palettes. But if not, just take your time as you go to cover your page. It will just, it will just take you more time to paint the whole thing. Remember, you can paint right over those oil pastels marks that you made. And I'm enjoying seeing the white come up. Which I hadn't before when I first drew. I think I'm going to add in some purple. Maybe a little bit mixed with green. I'm feeling like cool colors today with a pop of yellow. It's kind of my mood. What colors are you feeling like today? Or try a few of these. You don't have to stop at one. You can, you know, experiment on another piece of paper and try a different palette of color and different marks that you make. You can do this so that you fill your whole page with color, or you can stop and leave part of it white. There's really no answer. It's doing it till it feels complete to you. The nice thing about this thick watercolor paper is it can take quite a bit of water. You'll notice it, you might notice it start to bow up like this, and that's okay. It will dry. You can put it under something after it's dried to flatten it out, but this paper can take quite a bit of water. Great, so I want to show you this piece and where it ended up for me. Yeah, interestingly, when I painted these little bowls, I had kind of a similar palette that I was feeling, this yellow and green. So remember that after your clay pieces dry, give them a day or two, you can go back and paint them if you'd like. I even did part of this as finger paints, right into the palette with water and rubbing it on with my fingers, which was kind of a nice way to paint these. Yeah, so that is just a start for how you can use some of these materials. I hope that you explore them and give yourself permission to play with them. I just wanted to close today by sharing a quote with you from my board back here by Albert Einstein, and that is, "Creativity is intelligence having fun." So remember, just to have fun while you're making, and you may like what comes out of it in the end, you may not, it doesn't matter, but there's something to be gained by the process of letting yourself express things creatively. So thank you for joining me on the Art of Yoga Project YouTube channel, and have a great day. Thank you for showing up.